Let me tell you, if you've ever thought your HOA was just a bunch of bored retirees with too much time on their hands, let me introduce you to the bureaucratic demolition crew known as Laura Whitmore and her clipboard mafia. 5 minutes. That's all the peace I got after spending 3 weeks of my life planning, measuring, calculating every last inch of a fence I thought was going to finally shut out the noise from my neighbors. 5 minutes after I screwed in the last bolt boom, Laura materializes like some HOA demon, paperwork in hand, ready to hand me a violation already time-stamped before she even showed up. And let me tell you, that was just her opening shot. If you've ever been blindsided by a so-called authority who bends the rules to suit their own little kingdom, you're going to want to stick around because this story gets ugly. See, I'm not your average homeowner. I'm a senior electrical engineer and I take projects seriously. You should have seen my prep work, engineering diagrams, code, research material, stress tests, you name it. The steel I used for that fence wasn't just up to code, it was better than what half the houses in our subdivision sit on. I stuck to the exact height, the same line as the old wooden fence, down to the millimeter. I even had a folder full of photos and receipts thinking I was walking into this as bulletproof as possible. But Laura shows up with two lieutenants, Robert Clark and Maria Santos, both with clipboards cocked like sidearms, and she's not there to admire my handiwork. She's got her little laser pointer out measuring property pins I never knew existed. No nice job, James, no neighborly small talk, just cold, dead-eyed bureaucracy. Your application specified wooden fence repair, she says in that voice that could freeze boiling water. What I'm observing is metal fence installation, a different structural classification under bylaw 15.3.2. The kind of line that makes you realize this isn't about fences at all, it's about power. I tried to explain, showed her the photos, the receipts, everything matching the original footprint except the material, which God forbid was steel instead of wood. But then she starts measuring again, this time pulling a tape between property markers and my stomach drops. Her device says my fence is 3.2 feet over the property line. Coordinates might align with your previous fence, James, but property boundaries have been clarified since your original installation. Apparently, the original 1987 survey for our neighborhood was riddled with errors, and now GPS shows half our fences aren't even on our own land. So she prints up a violation, tells me I've got 48 hours to rip the fence out or get fined $500 a day. And by the way, 7 of my neighbors have filed anonymous complaints. 7. In a neighborhood where nobody even waves hello. I asked to see the complaints to see who supposedly feels unsafe because of my fence. Maria just glances at her tablet. Privacy concerns, James. You'll get the details at your hearing. The whole thing felt coordinated, like they'd been planning it for weeks. And it turns out they had. That's when I noticed David Thompson hanging around his mailbox just close enough to overhear. After Laura's crew leaves, David comes over with a nod and tells me, you might want to look at the HOA meeting minutes from 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I was at a conference in Denver. Turns out while I was out of state, Laura slipped in a bylaw change section, 15.3.2, that just so happens to give her total authority over any fence not built with the original materials. Coincidence? Yeah, right. You know what's wild? The day before the violation, Laura had already commissioned a structural report dated, signed, stamped, calling my fence a hazard. Her pet engineering firm, Westfield Consultants, just happened to file it 3 days before I finished my project. I started digging and realized Laura's been running this game for years. Engineering companies, anonymous complaints, rules rewritten when nobody's looking, all to squeeze homeowners out on technicalities. But here's the twist, my fence wasn't the real target. When I hired an independent surveyor to check the boundaries, he found that not just my fence, but 23 other properties had been built on incorrect lines for decades. A quarter of the neighborhood all exposed because of a survey error nobody caught since the Reagan administration. And Laura, she'd known for years. She kept that info to herself, waiting to use it as leverage whenever it suited her. I tried to work it out with my neighbor Helen Williams, who owned the sliver of land my fence technically crossed onto. But Laura got there first, telling Helen I was trying to steal her property, waving around blueprints of a monstrous 8-foot fence I'd never even dreamed of building. She forged my signature, my professional seal. Everything. Helen was scared to even talk to me until I showed her the real plans and the survey results. Then for the first time I saw just how tired she was of Laura's constant harassment. We agreed I'd buy the 3-foot strip, settle things legally and peacefully. But Laura wasn't done. She filed an emergency injunction at the county level to freeze any boundary changes blocking our deal. Cold threatening liens, fines, even a forced sale of my home if I didn't comply. And it didn't stop there. She started hitting me everywhere she could. Workplace rumors, calls to my ex-wife's psychology practice, noise complaints, vehicle citations, animal control visits for pets I didn't own. You ever feel like you're living in a Kafka novel? That's life under a power-hungry HOA president. But I wasn't giving up. I spent days combing through bylaws, property deeds, digital records, found out Laura's pet engineering firm was just a shell created by her and funded by a developer called Meridian. And then David, the helpful neighbor, drops a bomb. He's actually a municipal consultant for the same developer tasked with helping Laura push people like me out so they can buy up the neighborhood cheap and flip it for a massive profit. He even handed me a USB drive, recordings of Laura coordinating with Meridian, talking about Phase 2 municipal infrastructure and using fines, lawsuits, and fake insurance hikes to break homeowners' spirits. They wanted me gone, not because of my fence, but because if I won, I'd show everyone else how to fight back. So that's what I did. With Helen and a handful of other neighbors who'd been targeted, we hired a real investigator, got the paper trail, payments, contracts, emails, the works. I took it to the next HOA meeting in front of the whole neighborhood. I laid it all out, including the part where Laura's insurance premium hike was a complete fabrication. Our carrier hadn't raised rates at all. People finally started waking up. They voted Laura out by a slim margin, but enough. Her final speech was pure poison. You may have won the battle, but you haven't won the war. She was right, because the next morning the city announced an emergency redevelopment plan for our block. White vans rolled in, men in hard hats started photographing every house, taking measurements, justifying the next phase, eminent domain. City council votes forced buyouts. So here I am, fence still standing, but the war's just moved up the food chain. My fight with Laura became a fight with Meridian, and now the city's involved. All because I wanted a stronger fence. So let me ask you, where do you draw the line between protecting your home and surrendering to the machine? Drop a comment if you've ever tangled with an HOA, a city council, or a developer who played dirty. Do you fight back, or do you walk away and let them win? And if you're on the fence, no pun intended, about whether justice is worth the pain, let me know what you think. Because honestly, sometimes the only way to win is to keep fighting one neighbor at a time. If you've got a story, or if you've ever had to stand your ground against power that wanted to steamroll you, share it below. Let's talk about what justice looks like, who gets to decide, and how we stand up for each other when the odds feel stacked against us. Because if this neighborhood's taught me anything, it's that the real battle isn't over fences. It's over who gets to call this place home.